They forced the black woman to wash dishes in the ranch kitchen, scrubbing pots while cruel laughter echoed from the dining room, not knowing the rich rancher is her husband. The well-dressed woman had arrived covered in dust, her fine clothes torn from walking miles after her carriage broke down. Ranch hands sneered and shoved her toward the servants' quarters, assuming she was another desperate vagrant. Wealthy cattle buyers and socialites mocked her with racist slurs, certain she belonged nowhere but scrubbing floors. They believed her fate was sealed, a lifetime of invisible servitude. But across the Montana plains, the powerful rancher rides home from closing the biggest deal of his life. His empire and reputation hang in the balance, built on secrets that could either elevate them both to unprecedented heights or destroy everything they've worked for. Will their reunion ignite justice, or will prejudice shatter their carefully constructed world forever? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The dust cloud rose behind the broken carriage wheel as Cora Thompson stepped onto the dirt road. Her emerald traveling dress, once pristine from her journey back from Denver, now bore tears from the rough landing. The feather in her hat hung crooked. Mud stained her leather boots. She gathered her skirts and began walking toward the sprawling ranch in the distance. The Thompson Ranch stretched across the Montana horizon like a small kingdom. Cattle dotted the rolling hills. The main house stood 3 stories tall, with wraparound porches and gleaming windows. Cora smiled despite her disheveled appearance. Home at last. Ranch hands working near the gate stopped their conversation as she approached. Their eyes swept over her torn dress and dirty face. One spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Kitchen entrance is around back," the first hand called out. "Mrs. Morrison don't allow begging at the front door." Cora's smile faltered. "I'm not here to beg. I live here." The men burst into laughter. Cora's cheeks. She knew exactly where Mrs. Thompson had been, sitting in lawyers' offices in Denver, negotiating with railroad executives, signing papers that would secure their financial future for generations. "If you work, you eat," Barnes continued. "Otherwise, get off Thompson property." Through the kitchen window, Cora could see the main house buzzing with activity. The annual cattle auction celebration was in full swing. Wealthy buyers from across the territory had gathered for 3 days of business and socializing. She recognized several faces. Marcus Webb stood near the parlor window, gesturing dramatically to a group of ranchers. Eleanor Gibbons swept past in her blue silk gown, no doubt spreading gossip about everyone present. These people had dined at her table. They had praised her cooking and admired her piano playing. Today they looked through her like she was invisible. Barnes opened the kitchen door wider. "Well? You working or leaving?" Cora's hands clenched at her sides. She thought of the signed contracts in her ruined traveling bag. 3 additional ranches now belonged to the Thompson Empire. Water rights that would make them untouchable. Railroad agreements that would bring wealth beyond imagination. But first, she needed to survive this humiliation. "I'll work," she said quietly. The kitchen was sweltering. Steam rose from pots of stew bubbling on the massive stove. Dirty plates covered every surface. The regular kitchen staff rushed between tasks, barely glancing at the newcomer. Barnes shoved through the door. "Start with those." Barnes pointed to a mountain of greasy dishes. "And keep your mouth shut." Cora rolled up her sleeves. The water in the wash basin was lukewarm and scummy. She began scrubbing methodically, her mind racing. Through the serving window, she watched Webb corner a young rancher near the fireplace. She recognized Cora's hands stilled in the dishwater. Her husband Rhett was due back tonight from his railroad negotiations. Those deals were supposed to secure their future. But what if someone was working to destroy that future first? She resumed scrubbing with new urgency. Every conversation might hold clues. Every whispered exchange could reveal threats. The woman they forced to wash dishes was listening, learning, planning. And when the rich rancher returned home, he would discover that his enemies had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the wrong woman. The dinner bell chimed as Cora finished her third stack of plates. Steam from the hot water had dampened her hair. Her sleeves were soaked to the elbows, but her ears remained sharp. Marcus Webb's voice carried clearly from the dining room. He was speaking to someone about land acquisitions, about families who couldn't meet their loan payments, about opportunities for investors with ready cash. Cora moved closer to the serving window. She pretended to organize clean dishes while listening. "The Morrison Bank has been very cooperative," Webb said to his companion. "Amazing how quickly properties become available when credit becomes difficult." The other man chuckled. "Samuel knows which side benefits him most." Samuel Morrison, the bank president. Cora's blood chilled as pieces clicked together. She grabbed a serving tray and pushed through the kitchen door. No one questioned a servant carrying food. In the dining room, she became invisible again. Webb sat at the far table with two men she recognized, railroad investors from Chicago. Maps were spread between their dinner plates. Red marks covered dozens of properties across the territory. Eleanor Gibbons leaned over their shoulders, her voice honey-sweet. The Thompson Ranch would be the crown jewel, naturally. Such a shame about their recent difficulties. Cora's hands tightened on the tray. "What difficulties?" "Rhett Thompson thinks he's untouchable," Webb replied. "But Morrison has been tracking every loan, every investment. One missed about other ranches failing mysteriously, about families discovering impossible debts overnight, about Morrison's bank suddenly calling in loans ahead of schedule. The Martinez family lost everything last month," whispered one maid. 20 years of payments, then suddenly they owed triple the amount. "Same thing happened to the Johnsons," another replied. "Bank said they missed payments that were never missed." Cora filed away every detail. The pattern was becoming clear. Someone was systematically destroying successful ranchers, creating artificial debt, forcing sales. But why target families like theirs specifically? The answer came during dessert service. Eleanor's voice rose above the general chatter, sharp with malice. "Certain people forget their proper station in life. Marriage doesn't erase breeding, or lack thereof." The table fell silent, then knowing chuckles rippled through the guests. "Mixed marriages create such complications," Webb added smoothly, "especially when the wife attempts to involve herself in business matters." "Unnatural," Morrison agreed. "Women of that type don't understand their limitations." Eleanor's fan snapped open. "I heard she actually reads legal documents, imagines herself capable of understanding contracts." More laughter. Cora felt heat rise from her neck to her hairline, but she remained motionless by the serving table. "Thompson should have chosen more appropriately," Webb continued. "A wife who knows her place. Someone suitable for society. Instead, he married his cook," Eleanor said with vicious pleasure. "Now she pretends to be a lady of quality." The words hit like physical blows, but they also revealed something crucial. This wasn't just about money. This was personal. They intended to destroy not only the ranch, but her marriage, her very existence in their world. A new voice cut through the cruel laughter. "What exactly are you implying about my wife?" Every head turned toward the dining room entrance. Late fees. The total amount is rather substantial. From her position by the serving table, Cora watched her husband's face change. Confusion shifted to understanding. Understanding hardened into fury. "You're lying," Rhett said quietly. "I'm afraid the documents are quite clear," Morrison replied. "Unless payment is made immediately, the bank will be forced to call in your loans." Webb's smile was razor thin. "Fortunately, I'm prepared to make a generous offer for your property. Enough to settle your debts with some remaining." "How generous?" Rhett said. 30 cents on the dollar." The room went dead silent. 30 cents on the dollar for an empire worth hundreds of thousands. Rhett stepped closer to the table. "And if I refuse?" "Then you lose everything anyway," Webb replied, "but with nothing remaining for a fresh start." Eleanor's fan snapped shut. "Really, Rhett, you should be grateful. Not everyone gets such opportunities." Cora gripped the serving tray until her knuckles went white. The conspiracy was complete. Financial manipulation, social destruction, character assassination. But they had made one critical error. They assumed she was helpless, absent, powerless to fight back. The woman forced to serve their dinner had heard every word, witnessed every detail of their betrayal, and she was about to remind them exactly who they were dealing with. Cora set down the serving tray with deliberate calm. The crystal glasses clinked softly against the silver surface. Every eye in the dining room focused on her husband's growing anger. She had heard enough. Straightening her shoulders, Cora stepped out of the shadows by the serving table. Her torn dress and disheveled hair made her look like any other servant. But her voice carried the authority of education and breeding. "The payment records you're referencing don't exist," she said clearly. The room turned toward her voice. Eleanor's fan froze mid-flutter. Webb's smile disappeared. "What happened to your carriage?" "Broken wheel 2 miles out. I walked home to find our guests discussing our financial ruin." She opened the notebook to a marked page. "They've been planning this for months." Eleanor recovered her composure with visible effort. "Really, this is all quite dramatic. But surely you can't expect us to believe." "Believe what?" "That I own this ranch? That I helped build this business from nothing?" Cora's voice never rose, but steel entered her tone. "Or that I traveled to Denver to finalize the purchase of 3 additional properties?" Webb's face went white. "That's impossible." Cora reached into her other pocket and withdrew a folded document. The territorial seal gleamed red in the lamplight. "The Morrison Creek Ranch, the Blackfoot Valley property, the Copper Mountain spread. All purchased, all signed, all mine." Rhett took the papers with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the legal text, the signatures, the official stamps. "These properties control every water source for 50 miles, which makes us the largest landowners in 3 counties, Cora confirmed. "Rather difficult to bankrupt someone who controls the water rights." Morrison's fork clattered to his plate. "You can't possibly have had the capital." "Can't I?" Cora smiled for the first time that evening. "Mr. Morrison, exactly how much do you believe this ranch is worth?" "I don't see how that's relevant." "Humor me." Morrison glanced nervously at Webb. "Perhaps $50,000. "Wrong." Cora opened her notebook to another page. "Our cattle operation alone generated 80,000 last year. The horse breeding program brought in 30,000 more. The grain contracts added 25,000. Eleanor's fan snapped open again. "Those numbers are preposterous." "Are they?" "Rhett, what did the railroad offer for shipping rights across our land?" Her husband's voice was hoarse with amazement. In California, when this was supposedly signed. She held up another paper. And here's a missed payment notice for a loan we never took. Eleanor's composure cracked completely. This is all very entertaining, but you have no proof of wrongdoing. Don't I? Cora reached into her bodice and withdrew a small mechanical device. The latest Edison phonograph cylinder gleamed silver in the lamplight. Every word you've spoken tonight is recorded on this. The blood drained from Eleanor's face. That's not possible. New technology, Mrs. Gibbons. Amazing what money can buy. Cora touched the cylinder gently. Your voice discussing destroying other ranching families. Mr. Webb planning to cheat the Crow tribe out of their treaty lands. Mr. Morrison admitting to falsifying bank records. Webb stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. You can't prove anything. Can't I? The territorial judge is a personal friend. He's very interested in banking fraud cases. Cora smiled sweetly. Especially when they involve cheating Native Americans out of federal treaty lands. Morrison's face went gray. Federal crimes carried federal punishments, prison time, complete financial ruin. What do you want? He whispered. Cora looked at her husband. Rhett's face had transformed from confusion to fury to pride. He nodded once. Justice, she said simply, and an end to your conspiracy. Eleanor's fan trembled in her hands. You can't expose us. Think of the scandal. I am thinking of it. Every newspaper from here to Chicago will love this story. The wealthy socialite and corrupt banker who tried to steal from a former slave-turned-businesswoman. Cora's smile was sharper than winter wind. They'll call it the crime of the century. Webb made a desperate grab for the phonograph cylinder. Rhett caught his wrist in an letter with Morrison's bank letterhead. The Martinez family received this notice claiming they owed triple their actual debt. They lost their ranch within a week. Morrison's hands shook as he reached for his water glass. That was a legitimate collection action. Was it? Cora produced another document from the folder. Because here's the real payment record. They were current on every payment. In fact, they had overpaid by $300. Webb's jaw worked silently. Sweat stained his expensive shirt collar. Cora continued her inventory. The Johnson family, the Hendersons, the Creek tribe's grazing rights, all stolen through falsified debts. She turned to face the assembled guests. Some looked horrified. Others calculated their own exposure. All seemed to shrink under her steady gaze. You destroyed 12 families to steal their land, she said. Mothers and children forced from their homes, elders who lost everything they built over decades. Eleanor found her voice. Business is business. The weak don't survive. The weak? Cora's laugh was winter cold. Or the trusting? She walked to the window overlooking the ranch yard. Workers moved between the barns, tending animals and securing equipment for the night. Good people earning honest wages. You assumed I was weak because I looked like a servant, Cora said without turning around. You assumed I was powerless because of how I was born. Rhett moved to stand beside his wife. They assumed wrong. Cora faced the room again. Her torn dress and disheveled hair no longer mattered. Authority radiated from her posture, her voice, her unwavering stare. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Morrison, you will restore every stolen penny to the families you cheated, with interest. Morrison's mouth opened in protest. Cora raised one finger. You will also transfer the deed to your personal ranch to the Creek tribe as compensation for the grazing rights you sold illegally. Contracts, Cora said conversationally. Eleanor nodded weakly. Contracts that require crossing Thompson land to reach the rail depot. Eleanor's eyes widened in understanding. As of tonight, those crossing rights are revoked. Permanently. You can't. We have agreements. Had agreements. With people you respected. But since you've made clear that I'm not worthy of respect, I see no reason to honor arrangements made with my social inferiors. The phrase hit like a slap. Eleanor had used those exact words about other families countless times. Now they were turned against her. Rhett stepped forward. There's more. He pulled a telegraph from his jacket pocket. This arrived an hour before I returned home. Cora read the message quickly. Her smile widened with each line. The territorial governor has approved our application for a new township, she announced. Thompson City will be established at the junction of our 3 new properties. The room went dead silent. All business licenses for the new town must be approved by the town council, Rhett continued, which consists of myself, my wife, and 3 elected representatives. That means every store, every bank, every business that wants to operate in Thompson City needs our permission, Cora added. Morrison went pale. The railroad planned to build their depot there. Planned to, Cora agreed. Whether they're still welcome depends on who their business partners are. Webb understood first. You're cutting us out of everything. I'm giving you the same consideration you gave the families you destroyed, Cora corrected. The same respect you showed me tonight. She walked back to the table and gathered her evidence. The phonograph cylinder went into one pocket, the falsified documents into another. You have 24 hours to make restitution to every family you cheated, she said. After that, these recordings go to every newspaper from here to recordings by special courier 2 days earlier. Washington took treaty violations very seriously. Mr. Morrison is cooperating fully, Harrison continued. He's provided additional evidence about the land fraud scheme, names, dates, financial records. And Mr. Webb fled during the night, left his ranch, his cattle, everything. There's a federal warrant for his arrest. The second rider reached the porch as Harrison finished his report. Sarah Martinez climbed down from her horse with tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah said, her voice breaking, the bank returned our ranch this morning. Our home, our land, everything. She pressed a worn envelope into Cora's hands. This was pinned to our door. $3,000. More than we ever had before we lost everything. Cora opened the envelope carefully. Morrison's shaky handwriting covered the note inside. Restitution for illegal seizure of property, plus interest and damages for unlawful eviction. 12 families received similar envelopes, Sarah continued. The Johnsons, the Hendersons, everyone Webb and Morrison cheated. We have our lives back. The third rider arrived as Sarah wiped her eyes. Chief Running Bear of the Creek tribe sat tall in his saddle, his weathered face creased with something approaching a smile. The bank president signed over Morrison Ranch to the tribe yesterday, he said in perfect English. Our children will have grazing land for their horses. Our elders will have a place to rest. He dismounted and approached Cora with formal dignity. You have done what our treaties could not. You have returned justice to our people. Cora accepted his offered handshake. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Chief Running Bear's smile widened. The tribal council would like to propose a partnership. Your new town needs traders and craftsmen. We have both. Recommending Thompson City as the site for the new territorial courthouse. Cora nearly dropped her coffee cup. A courthouse? Federal courthouse, with a federal judge, federal marshals, and jurisdiction over treaty violations across 3 territories. The implications hit her like a lightning strike. A federal courthouse meant permanent protection for Native American rights. It meant oversight of banking practices. It meant justice would have a permanent home in their community. There's more, Rhett said softly. He pulled another telegram from his pocket. This one bore the official seal of the Department of the Interior. Washington wants to meet with you, he said, about establishing a model program for economic development in integrated communities. Cora read the telegram twice. The federal government was requesting her expertise. Her ideas about cooperation between different communities had reached the highest levels of power. They're offering to fund the project, Rhett added. $50,000 to start. More if the initial results prove successful. A wagon rumbled up the drive, interrupting her amazement. Eleanor Gibbons sat rigidly beside the driver, her usual elegant attire replaced by a simple brown dress. No jewelry adorned her neck. No feathers decorated her hat. The wagon stopped near the porch. Eleanor climbed down slowly, her movements stiff with humiliation. "Mrs. Thompson," she said formally, "I've come to apologize." Cora set down her coffee cup but remained seated. "Have you?" "My husband's shipping company declared bankruptcy yesterday. The railroad contracts were our primary income." Eleanor's voice was barely audible. "We're leaving Montana." "Where will you go?" "My sister in Ohio offered us work in her boarding house, kitchen work and cleaning." The irony was not lost on either woman. Eleanor would spend her days washing dishes and scrubbing floors, the same work she had forced Cora to perform. "I wanted you to know," Eleanor continued, her hope. "After everything she did?" Cora leaned against her husband's shoulder. Breaking the cycle of cruelty starts with choosing compassion over revenge. A dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Another visitor heading toward Thompson Ranch. Cora smiled as she recognized the rider. The territorial judge was coming to discuss the courthouse plans. Justice was riding toward them across the Montana plains. The woman they had forced to wash dishes was about to change the world. 1 year later, the morning sun illuminated a transformed landscape. Where once only cattle grazed, the bustling town of Thompson City stretched across the valley. Federal courthouse, trading post, bank with honest practices, school that welcomed children of every background. Cora stood at the podium in the courthouse square, addressing the largest gathering in territorial history. Ranchers sat beside tribal elders. Former slaves shared benches with immigrant families. Women in business suits mingled with men in work clothes. The first annual Montana Territory Business Conference was about to begin. 12 months ago, some of you lost everything to fraud and hatred, Cora said, her voice carrying clearly across the crowd. Today, you own thriving businesses built on fairness and mutual respect. Applause rippled through the assembly. In the front row, Sarah Martinez beamed with pride. Her family's ranch now supplied beef to 3 counties. Beside her, Chief Running Bear nodded approvingly. Creek Craftsman had opened the territory's most successful trading post. The Thompson Business Institute has graduated 200 students, Cora continued. Former ranch hands who now own their own spreads. Kitchen workers who became restaurant owners. Stable boys who started freight companies. She gestured toward a section reserved for institute graduates. Their faces glowed with accomplishment and hope. But our greatest success isn't measured in dollars. Homesteaders. Cora's speech continued, outlining plans for expansion. A railroad depot that would connect Thompson City to markets across the nation. A teacher's college that would prepare educators for integrated schools. A medical clinic staffed by doctors trained to serve all communities. But none of this would exist without the people who chose courage over comfort, she said. She looked directly at the workers section, former kitchen staff who had risked their jobs to report suspicious conversations, ranch hands who had testified against corrupt foremen, bank clerks who had provided evidence of falsified records. True change begins with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The crowd rose in sustained applause. When the noise finally faded, Cora made her final announcement. The federal government has approved our proposal for a national pilot program. Thompson City will become the model for integrated economic development across the American West. Gasps and cheers erupted throughout the square. A national program meant federal funding, recognition, protection. Most importantly, it meant their success would be replicated in territories from California to Texas. As the formal speeches concluded, the crowd dispersed into smaller groups. Business meetings under shade trees, contract negotiations on courthouse steps, plans for cooperative ventures between different communities. Cora found herself surrounded by reporters from newspapers across the nation. The story of Thompson City had captured imaginations from New York to San Francisco. Mrs. Thompson, what's your advice for other communities facing similar challenges? Asked a journalist from the Chicago Tribune. Start with respect, she replied simply. See people for their potential, not their appearance or background. What about resistance from established interests? Resistance fades when justice proves more profitable than oppression. A reporter from the Denver Post raised his hand. Is it true that Marcus Webb was captured in California? Federal marshals arrested him last week. He'll face trial here in Thompson City for fraud. Prejudice, the same pattern that had plagued Montana before justice arrived. I heard about Thompson City from families who got their land back, Rebecca continued. I came to learn, to understand how you fought them and won. Cora smiled and took Rebecca's arm. You're not alone anymore. We'll teach you everything you need to know. She guided Rebecca toward the institute building. Have you eaten today? Not since yesterday. Then we'll start with dinner. Fighting corruption requires strength. As they walked, other travelers emerged from various corners of the square. Word had spread across the West. Thompson City had become a beacon for anyone seeking justice and opportunity. The woman they had forced to wash dishes now welcomed desperate travelers with dignity and hope. Her message had evolved from personal survival to universal truth. True power came not from keeping others down, but from lifting everyone up. Not from protecting privilege, but from expanding opportunity. Not from building walls, but from opening doors. The kitchen where she had once scrubbed dishes in humiliation now served as the Institute's dining hall. Students of every background shared meals and dreams around tables built from Montana timber. Outside, the sun set behind mountains that had witnessed transformation beyond imagination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose justice over revenge. The revolution had begun with one woman's refusal to accept humiliation. It would continue with every person who chose dignity over cruelty, hope over hatred, and community over division. In Thompson City, the future had already arrived.